Okay, now you can start.
Mathematic Trench by me and Joshua. So, unfortunately, you will not be able to see this wonderful homepage and doing this thing. So, what is the Mathematics Trench? Well, basically, it's the Mariana Trench of maths. It's extremely big and it contains everything in maths. So basically, the deeper you go, well, the harder things get until you become Joshua's. Right, so this is just the surface. I do not have the capacity to do anything deeper than this. So counting, if you've gone to school, you know how to do this, but so it's the simplest, basically one of the simplest things you can do in the Mathematics Trench. So you can either count up or down, and this is just a lot of numbers, just 1 to 100. So you can count in different intervals, so you can add 1, so 1 plus 1 is 2. But if you want something different, you can count by 2s. 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, and so on. Addition, it's getting a bit harder, a little bit. So basically, it's the inverse of subtraction, and so it's also quite simple. And basically, what addition means is to put two numbers together, and so basically put two addends together, and then they form the sum, which is basically those two numbers. It can get really tricky if you try to do really big numbers. Subtraction, which is basically addition's inverse. It's the inverse of addition, so it's also quite simple, but a lot of people think it's harder than addition. So basically, you take a certain thing, you take a certain amount away from the minuend, and basically the minuend is what the number you take away from, and the subtrahend is the number you take away from the minuend, and if you put them together in a blender, they become minus, and then the end result is the difference. And so to subtract, you must have 2 or more numbers, and it can get very, very tricky. Multiplication. The multiplication is again harder than subtraction, addition, and counting, and it's the inverse of division. So basically, it's still quite simple, but it's basically the process of adding the same number over and over again. So the number that we're adding up over and over again is called the multiplicand, and the number and the times we're adding it up together is the multiplicator. And so the end result is called the product of the two numbers, and the two numbers are called the coefficients. Now you also need 2 or more numbers to do multiplication, and it can get very tricky, especially if you are someone like Joshua. Division is the opposite of multiplication, or the inverse, and it's still quite simple in terms of maths. And so it's a process of separating a number into different parts. So the number is called the dividend, and the divisor, and the number that you're kind of like separating it into is the divisor, and the end result is called the quotient, and the number that is left over, if you're only dealing with whole numbers, is the remainder. And this can also get very tricky. And negative numbers. This is getting a bit harder, but still, it's quite simple. So it's any number below 0. So, because if you have 1, 2, 3, then you're gonna have -1, -2, -3, and it's basically the same thing as normal. It's this. All the numbers of above 0 are also included below 0, which is kind of hard to guess why. And so the basics of negative numbers are negative numbers times or divided by negative numbers are positive numbers. Negative numbers times or divided by positive numbers are negative numbers. And for addition and subtraction, for addition and subtraction, it's just the same. Decimals.
Okay, stop.